When a turtle comes ashore, when a turtle comes ashore, we just pop over and scan her. We wait until she's finished nesting and then scan her on her way back to the beach. All right, hang on. So this is what it looks like when they are nesting during the day. It doesn't look like a lot of movement. She's taken a long time to crawl up the beach. You can see that she is breathing slowly. Their kind of throat moves in and out. I was pretty excited. This was the first turtle I saw nest, and you'll have to excuse the shaky video. But she nested during the day. This is her covering up. Sorry, this is her finishing digging. And then we'll get to the actual laying. So she hovers her cloaca over a light bulb shaped hole and then drops the eggs in. She is covered with all kinds of epibiota. She's got little crabs and shrimp and barnacles and things on her, and that's attracting some bugs in the air and gnats as well. You can see all the little shrimp. So when she's finished laying eggs, she covers it up with those big back feet, and then it's kind of a typical progression. She'll cover them up and then she will move. So one of the things that the turtle team looks at is what do the field signs look at? When she's finished covering it, she pulls herself around. Usually they lay eggs facing the dunes. Usually, they don't always. And then they work their way back towards the ocean. And this poor gal came up a long way on her way back. She's got a stump right in the way, but she did figure out how to get around it without very much ado and worked her way back down to the ocean. They're pretty tired at this point. This is a 300-pound carapace out of the water. Gravity is a drag. I know what it feels like when I get out of the water. I can't imagine for these poor gals. They get all the way up there and they lay their eggs, and now they have to work their way all the way back to the water. So she's making her way back there, and then it always feels like such a relief for them when the water can kind of lift them up and move them um, with some flotation back out to sea. So that is what the turtles are doing. This is what the people do. And here on Dewey's, because it's a pretty small community, we allow whole families and occasionally kids when they're trained to participate. But somebody walks the beach of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, all the way around Florida to look every morning for sea turtles, which is great because it gives all kinds of research agencies eyes on the ground. So they call in things like bird kills or fish kills or other random things on the beach that we might want to know about. But this is what somebody is looking for. They're looking for these great big tire tracks that look like, an ATV has been on the beach. You'll notice in this picture, I don't know whether you can see my little cursor here, but in this picture, there's a nest down in this section. There are a few field signs that we look for to see if the turtle nested here. One of them is to see how long she was on the beach. And to do that, we look for a track differential. So you can see that one of these tracks is much longer than the other track. We also get very excited when we find nests. So this is our group that came out that day to look for nests. Um, and it's a big kind of family event out here when we do that. But here are the field signs we're looking for. We're looking for a body pit or a crescent-shaped mound in the middle. We're looking for thrown sand because turtles always follow kind of a predictable laying routine. They find a suitable site, they dig a hole. Now, if they're interrupted or something doesn't feel right or they hit a lot of vegetation or wet sand, they may change their minds. But if they're going to nest, then they will cover that up. So you'll see thrown sand in every which direction, and also they dig up some vegetation on their way. So we look to see what that vegetation looks like, and then we look for the egg chamber. We use a T-shaped probe. I'm actually probing outside where I think the chamber is right now because I want to see what the sand feels like. And then you balance yourself very carefully over it. What's going to happen is you're going to hit this inverted light bulb shape hole, and you might hit it at any point, and it will give a little bit more. It's amazing how tightly she can pack the sand, but then we dig down and hopefully we find the eggs. And if she has found a perfect spot, we will take one egg out of the nest for research, cover it back up, cage it, and leave it. But sometimes it needs to be relocated. In South Carolina, the only reason you relocate a nest is if it's in vehicle traffic, if it's below a predictable high tide, or if it's been predated. So most of our relocations this year, I think we've relocated 7, and all but one were predated by coyotes, which is why we relocate them. We don't want to put them back in the same hole. The coyotes know where they are, but B, like we want to make sure that there aren't broken eggs in the nest with the live eggs so that it introduces a bunch of contaminants. We take one egg and we put it in a little vial and label it very specifically and send it off to the University of Georgia, and we'll get to where that research is going a little further on. And then we only relocate it if necessary. But when you relocate it, you have to be careful about a couple of things. One is we wear gloves so that we're not contaminating the turtles with our own anything on our hands or anything else, but we're also protecting our own hands from things that might be in there. The turtle coats those eggs with this sort of antibiotic, antifungal, but we don't want to introduce anything new. And if there is something like salmonella in there, we don't want that on our own hands. So we're careful. We also make sure that bucket is pointed very carefully in a direction we can mimic. Turtles do something with the magnetic field. It's important when we take these eggs out of a nest to keep their orientation the same relative to the ocean and preferably each other as you get them out. So you're very carefully pulling them out and putting them in. The person who is doing the relocating cannot have a conversation with anybody. They need to be counting and keeping focused on which direction those eggs are, and you don't want to drop them. The reason we try and finish early is that within 12 hours, if that yolk will adhere to the shell wall after about 12 hours. And that's what we think maybe was some of the issue with those Florida turtles way back in the 70s, is that if you relocate a turtle nest after it started, after that yolk has adhered to the cell wall, you can damage them in the process. So that is one of the reasons that they're trying to get everybody completely finished with all relocations by 9. We try to have ours done by 7 because it's pretty hot on our beach. One person digs an alternate hole, and before you take them out of the existing nest, you make sure that new nest is at least mostly done. If you find you have 150 eggs you need to relocate, you might have to make that new nest a little bigger. And then we actually use a scallop shell at the bottom of the nest to sort of scoop around down there and make sure that it's the right shape. And then again, we put them back in very carefully counting. You can see that again, these have been predated, so there's a little insect energy, but we try and keep them in the same position relative to one another. That was a big handful. I don't take that many very often, but that was, hang on one sec. Oops. How did that happen? Um, and then the next thing we do is sort of assess predation. So I actually live stream to our turtles members, who many of whom are not on the beach every week. So I live stream investigating a nest. This was a nest that we investigated this year. Kind of walked up I don't know, it didn't show us the end of that, but we walk up and look and see what we can see on the surface. So here in the bottom of this, you can see that there are eggs scattered. The hole has been broken into, and you have to try and understand which predator you have on the beach. So mink they leave little tiny tracks. They're super cute. We've not had a mink go into nests, but we do have mink tracks on the beach. They'll go at the top of the nest. Armadillos are digging machines. We just got armadillos a year and a half ago. They have not found our turtle nest yet, but they are all over the beach. I'll answer this right now. Armadillos can inflate and float. They can take a big deep breath and off they come, or they can walk under the water. We are far offshore. It's a surprise that we have armadillos, but we do. We also have bobcats, and we have seen bobcat tracks at our turtle nest, but they have not gone in. By far, our most frequent predators used to be raccoons. Then the coyotes got here in 2016, and these are all things that would predate nests, but this is what it looks like after the coyote has gotten to it. So you can see there's ghost crabs are also predators, but they usually only take one egg or two until the hatchlings trap. They're a big predator of hatchlings, but you can see the eggs are down in here. There are some intact eggs down there in the bottom right, but also broken eggs on the surface. So what we would do, and you can see the coyotes' claw marks as they dug it out. So they had a good old feast that day. This is the second half of that other video as we come upon. We're looking at all these field signs. We're looking for thrown sand, and then we find the hole with the coyote tracks in there and the eggs everywhere. If you're not sure of what the predator is, I mean, I can see the canine tracks from here, but if you're not sure what the predator is, then you take pictures of the tracks. We all have rulers in our backpacks to take photos so we know exactly how big they are. This is a nest they didn't find, but these little coyote puppies actually watched me
Hmm.
process the nest and cage it, and they did not come bother it. They're kind of opportunistic here. We find that they're interfering with our turtles before our team finds the nests. And it's not more than half of the nests on the island. If there are coyote puppies, so this year that there were 5 puppies, we had 27 nests, and at the end of the year, we had something like 437 hatchlings, which is very low. Last year, we did not have puppies, and we had 14 nests and almost 1,000 hatchlings. So it does make a difference, but they are highly entertaining. They play just like puppies do. This guy was having a field day with a ghost crab one day when we were on the beach. Again, sometimes I'm just so excited I can't hold the camera still, but it was pretty fun to see these little guys play. Um, it is hard to see them deface turtle nests. If it was a raccoon, we'll cage it this way. We'll use a folding metal cage that sticks up above the nest by about 5 inches and goes way down at a foot. And these are made of chicken wire and they fold. Most of our nests now are predated by raccoons. This is what the coyote is. So you can see how the kids were helping us put it together, but you can see how there's a high spot. That's because raccoons have opposable thumbs and they can reach in and dig down. So you want to make a bit of a barrier to keep that raccoon far away from the nest. Coyotes come in from the side. And so we now use these spread square, we use plastic that's supposed to be take a long time to photo degrade. And so far we're on like year 4 and they're fine. We spread it out wider. If armadillos start getting into our nest, then you use something that looks like a big old comb and it just goes down the sides with long metal spikes to keep the armadillos from burrowing in from the side.
Judy,
Yeah,
we have a couple of quick questions while
sure.
we're set.
While we're
Um,
at predators.
how do coyotes locate the nest? Is there a learned behavior or a smell or?
So it's a great question, and we're not 100% sure. We've actually tried crazy things like because we have nothing to do. We've tried crazy things like making fake turtle crawls and burying chicken eggs to see if they know that they're using visual cues. We've tried scent cues. We really have no idea. I think a lot of it is just straight up opportunistic. They like to be on the beach. There are lots of things they can eat on the beach, especially ghost crabs. And we've never had coyotes go into a nest that we've protected and caged. We think that they're just finding the turtle. And I'm sure there are smells attached to that actual turtle crawl. So
Oh, thank you. And the second question is, what do the eggs feel like? Do they feel like a hen egg? Are they hard or are they kind of
they're
soft?
not hard. That's a great question. So they're about the size of a ping pong ball, but they have a give to them.
It's okay.
When the turtle puts them into the chamber, they fall against each other so tightly that they're like almost a mass. So they've got these kind of soft edges that will allow them to be in there really closely without a lot of air in them. When we relocate a nest, we cannot duplicate that. So I always have to dig a much bigger chamber than the mother turtle put her eggs in if we're going to relocate them. But we know that our nests have better success if we trust the turtle. So most of the time, unless the turtle like got interrupted and dropped her eggs really close to the tide, which I was saying, we've only of our 16 nests this year, we only had one turtle that was in a place that was below a predictable tide. That said, we have had some unpredictable tides this week, and we've had 4 nests wash over, some of them 3 times.
Oh,
Now that should be lowering the temperature. We don't know what the survival rate about those is going to be. We're kind of working on understanding. Every year we get new data and new information. And I would have said that those nests were probably going to be fine. And we have seen some washovers. Turtles will put them, they've been doing this for millennia. They will get some washovers. So and again, if we have kids that are helping us, we have a whole junior turtle team with a training protocol, and we have this kid is now about 17, and he trains some of the younger kids, but they will help us keep the data sheets. They will help us do things like cross out the tracks. You put a great big X in those tracks because if you don't, you'll get phone calls all day with people saying, "Hey, did you see there were turtle tracks on the beach?" So we cross them out with an X, and that way tomorrow's walkers also know that that crawl has been processed if it stays looking the same the next day. Um, so we have then you wait. Then you just it's very exciting. You just wait. This one of these slides moved a page. We label them with now because there's been some issues in South Carolina with people messing with turtle nests. Now we just put a number on the nests, and I keep all of the information that we used to put on the sign digitally on a Google. It's actually on a spreadsheet that is now coordinated with a map that when you get out there and you walk up close to it, you can click a button and see what that nest is all about. But that is only the turtle team has access to that. This is what hatching looks like. It's little bitty tracks. Ghost crab tracks are out here as well. They're kind of down here in the bottom of the screen. Sometimes people think ghost crab tracks or baby turtle tracks, but look, they just look like they're just working their way down to the sea. They've had to work around some dunes, but that nest was a boil. This is a boil. So we saw this last year. Somebody called me and said, I think I see an armadillo track near that nest. So I went out to look, and it wasn't an armadillo, it was a hatchling. So these are hatchlings that are working their way out of this nest, and they're using this structure of the cage to sort of wedge themselves up. But what will happen is in the nest, they hatch out, and for about 3 days, they kind of wiggle around and wiggle out of their shells. They have a yolk sac they're using up, but there's still enough nutrients in that yolk sac that will help them get where they're going. It's hard not to want to help them out of there, isn't it? But they manage just fine. And the less we can interfere with a healthy turtle hatch, the better it is. We did have a lot of people around looking. This is unheard of. This is the first time for me in 20 years. These guys started to hatch at 7 p.m. and then they waited. They kind of paused and waited until literally everyone on the island heard about it and could come down and watch this great spectacle. But aren't they just the cutest things? They look like little wind-up toys, and that is all in real time. You can see how the tracks kind of follow on top of one another, and then they work their way through all of the obstacles on their way to the beach. And we will get to them coming down. But this was an actual boil that everybody got to see. This guy came through the rack and carried that one little piece a little bit further. And then this is them getting down to the waves. And those waves are tough on those little guys. It knocks them over, but they right themselves and they make their way out. This is the same. You can kind of see how once they can get underneath a wave, they swim. You can sort of see them take a breath out there a little bit. But usually takes them a couple waves and a couple knocks over to get out to the ocean. But it's very exciting. Again, this looks like it's a relay race or something. They're so fun. And in that instance, it was pretty magic. Everybody could wake up their grandchildren and get them down. There people down there in pajamas and whole groups of people. After 3 days after the nest hatches, 72 hours, we do what's called an inventory. And this is where we get a lot of our scientific data. So we open it to the public, at least to the public on the island. I think there are inventories on most islands, and some of them are publicized and some of them are not. But we invite people to come down. We now have people kind of standing behind lines when we do this, but we pull out the signs and then we take inventory of what's in there. So the helper on the right is counting piles of 10 in eggs that did not hatch. And the rest of us, it's raining in this picture, which is why we're kind of hurrying up. But the rest of us are looking through. The big benefit, of course, is when you find live turtles in there. Now, those turtles, if left to their own devices, their name is basically hors d'oeuvre, right? They would be in the dunes, they would nourish the dunes, they would perish once they've had all the ability of their brothers to sort of and sisters to lean against each other and get out. The few that are left behind have no traction to get out of that hole. So usually they run to the litter and they would not survive. Because we go in 72 hours later, often there are one or two, sometimes more than that, turtles that were not able to make it out of the nest, whether they were behind some vegetation. And those we put in a bucket and move them not into the water, but where they have a chance to go across the sand. That is a slow motion video that my husband took. See, now that's the real speed. But they have a chance to go across that sand We think that there is some kind of imprinting with the magnetic field that happens with the sand. We know that turtles, like if there are isotopic lines around the globe that are magnetic, and if true north shifts, the number of nests between those lines increases. If true north, if the lines go further apart, the number of nests in those lines decreases. So we know that turtles are consistently coming back to the same-ish magnetic signature. This is a very small turtle that was almost out of its shell, and he did not make it. So that gets counted as a hatched egg, but a dead hatchling. But we have lots of help. And it's always, one of the best things about turtles is they're kind of charismatic megafauna. So, or in this case, microfauna, but everybody loves them. So they get a chance to participate in counting them and measuring what our success rates are. And I don't know how we ended up rescue and research. So this, we want to move. This is the wrong. I think we need to go further over here. Sorry about that. We do, if we find turtles, I'm going to go back one. Hang on. That is actually supposed to be further along in that video. As we come through here, we find some turtles that are need a rescue. And this one did not. We scanned her for pits, but I don't know what. I thought I had one floating in the water. This is a stranding. This is the way we usually get stranded turtles. Occasionally we have live strandings, and those we get to the Sea Turtle Hospital. Again, you have a permit for a stranding, and we go down and we do a whole assessment. Okay, so pop quiz. Anybody have any idea what this is? Sometimes we do a necropsy. This is part of a necropsy. Does anybody know what this organism is for? What this organ is for?
Is the trachea?
Yes, yes. This is how leatherback turtles eat jellyfish. This is what the structures in their esophagus that will move that jellyfish down to their digestive system. I thought that was just fascinating. So we do have, in this case, it was a leatherback that had washed ashore. We had a whole science lesson where we all came down and helped collect data, collect information about the epibiota that was there. It was really, really interesting. And then we have some green turtles, a lot of times that are distressed. We had some kids this year notice a green turtle swimming around with kind of with her butt up in the air, and they managed to get that turtle off to the Sea Turtle Hospital. We called the Isle of Palms stranding team, and they came in and transported them. So this is our like 2025 overview. We had 18 crawls with 14 nests. We relocated 4 of them, and we had almost 1,000 hatchlings. It was also our 25th year, and we had 8 unique females. So out of every nest, we take 1 egg. At the University of Georgia, Brian Shimlin, and I think he actually has his own lab called the Northern Recovery Unit Research Department. He'll run those DNA through the eggshell through a process that allows him to identify the maternal DNA of a turtle. So we will be able to tell when our turtles nest, where they go next, how many days are in between their nests, how many years they nest, and how that works. So this year we've had 30 crawls with 16 nests. And we do, as a community, we have an intern program. We have intern housing here. We share interns with Cape Romaine. And I don't know if Nora's on this call, but Nora's a volunteer up at Cape Romaine. I think Nicole is as well. So there are a bunch of master naturalists that volunteer up there. That one island gets a third of the sea turtle nests from Georgia, north of Florida, basically. And this year they are at 3172 nests. So I think there's like 10 miles, maybe 15 miles of beach habitat with over 3,000 nests. So it's pretty amazing. And I can send you a video that Abby King made. She's the biologist that is funded by Coastal Expeditions up there. But right now there is the Friends of Cape Romaine send an intern there. We send 2, and Coastal Expeditions has 1 or 2 and a biologist. So there's a whole group of nonprofits that are funding turtle research up at the Cape because it's such an important location, but also really busy. All right.
Hey,
Yes.
Judy, before you go to this one, this is Scott Glass. Hey,
Hi,
good
Scott.
presentation. So, yeah, so 13 nests. 9 of them were left in situ, 4 relocated, but only 8 unique females. Am I?
Yes.
So does that mean several females nested twice?
Yes, and some more than
Really?
that. Yeah, so one of them, we have one that I saved for last because she's just so productive. But it's kind of cool because we're learning some turtles take 1 year off, some turtles take 3 to 5 years off. So these are our 8 unique females. Oh, I had a problem with that. Sorry about that. The first one was first recorded in 2016 up in Cape Romaine. Last year she was at Edisto, Cape Romaine, Deweese, and Cape. So she nested in 2022 and in 2025. Sorry, I don't know why that got all cattywampus. Um, this one, or the second one we had, nested twice on Deweese. There is more than a 12-day gap, like there might be a whole month gap between. So we've got actually a 2 month gap between May 28th and July 25th. So it's possible that there was another nest in there that we have somehow missed. A lot of the nests on Bulls Island are predated by coyotes. Almost every nest on capers is predated by coyotes. And right now, I don't even think people are picking up eggshells on capers to verify that. That was done by DNR for previous years, but I'm not sure there's anybody checking capers at the moment. And then this one shows up in the database in 2019 on either side of us, Seabrook and Cape Island. In 2022, all of her nests were on one island in Cape Romaine Wildlife Refuge. And in 2025, she bounces between IOP and Deweese. She left 3 nests on Deweese in 2025.
So Judy, does that mean they're only depositing a fraction of the eggs that they're holding from a given mating?
So,
or
as far as I
or-
understand this, and I'm not a marine biologist, but as far as I understand this, sea turtles will mate with as many males that could get a grip on her.
Yeah.
And they can store sperm for a long time. You might have different, the females kind of internally fertilize the eggs as the eggs are in their ovipositor. And so as those eggs build up in that ovipositor, she will come ashore when she's ready and lay those eggs, and then there will be more working their way through the ovipositor for the next session of nesting.
Wow.
She will not need to mate again. She will have enough sperm stored to have those eggs be fertilized. We don't know a lot about the paternal DNA, so that's part of the research that they're working on now. This one, 2025, was her first year nesting. She only had 2 hatchlings that survived here. The coyotes found her, so I don't know if she was moving more slowly or she came in closer to where they were, but she had 101 eggs hatch on IOP last year and 45 on Folly. So in her first year of nesting in the database, she's probably a fairly young turtle, there were 148 successful hatchlings. This one nested in 2017, 2021, and 2025. So she's taking 4 years off between nests. And in 2025, 3 of her nests were on Deweese. So lots of site fidelity that year. But and we actually got to see her. The picture at the bottom is we encountered her on her way back. But one of the things that we're sort of starting to understand is like the language around turtles coming back to the same beach where they were hatched is a pretty relative distance. We have some turtles like this one nested from Deweese to North Litchfield. Like this is a strong, long stretch of beach that
Wow.
is her stretch. We've had turtles that nest as far as Florida. Now this gal, she nested here since 2018. She's come to Deweese 4 times, 2018, 2020, 2022. Then she took a couple years off and nested again in 2025. Almost all of her nests are on Deweese. She has 2 nests on the Isle of Palms from last summer. She had 6 nests last summer. And over the course of her time nesting on Deweese, she's hatched 1,089 hatchlings, 937 successful hatchlings on Deweese Island alone. That's pretty amazing because, again, the estimates on how many sea turtles, I went to a seminar on sea turtles again pretty recently, and they're still saying 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 10,000 will make it to sexual maturity. So this one, just in her time on Deweese, has had 1,000 hatchlings. over the whole time that we've collected DNA, we've put in 219 samples and it's come back with 113 individuals. One of those turtles nested once on Dewey's in 2012. And then since 2019, she's nested 28 times on 16 different beaches. Like, it's a crazy spread of beaches, too. It goes from Florida all the way up to like the south coast of North Carolina. The maximum number of nests in a single year was a turtle that was here in 2015, and her nests range from Edisto to Bald Head Island up in North Carolina. But one year she nested all of her 6 times on Bull's Island. And then there is, and I don't have the exact details because it's not one of our turtles, but I know in Cape Romaine, one of the things that this has told us is that there's a turtle that nests, and then her mother also nested on that beach, and her grandmother nested on that beach. So if turtles really take 25 to 30 years to mature, you've got 75 to 90 years worth of turtle life nesting all at once on that beach. That is seriously cool stuff.
Hmm.
And paternal DNA is next. So now it's kind of a little opportunistic to get the paternal DNA. In some places, they're using whole egg yolks to do that. But in other places, like this one that is on this chart from Dewey's last year, that was when there are hatchlings that don't make it out of the nest. We wait until everybody's gone because it's a little squidgy for people to do, and not everyone on our turtle team is comfortable, but we snip a flipper and send it off in formaldehyde for testing, and now they can get data on the paternal side of the equation. So we know there was some question about whether male turtles came in to nest in successive years, right? We just don't know. But this proves that they do. This one turtle came in 2025 and fathered hatchlings that were in one of our nests and Dewey in Isle of Palms, and then also has shown up, and they're using egg yolks to test it in Cape Romaine in 2026. So kind of cool. And then there's one in Hobcob Barony 25 and also Cape in 26. So there's just so much still to learn that makes it really exciting. And that is all of my slides. So I will stop sharing and see if you guys have questions. Oh my gosh, I talked for 45 minutes. I apologize.
Judy, could you explain, please, why it is when you go to move a nest, you place the eggs in the same direction and everything, and you took them out of the hole? Why are you doing that? And
We think that they have that again, we know that magnetic field has an effect on turtles. We have folks that have done research with swimming baby turtles in kind of like a tide chamber, and they move magnets around, and those turtles move according to that magnetic field. So if the turtles need that magnetic imprinting or that orientation, we just don't want to mess anything up. So we don't really know how the whole mechanism works, but we know it's important to try and keep them as safe as possible. So that's part of our strategy, to relocate them gently and carefully.
But you said lots of times your new nest is a lot bigger than the original one, so how do you keep them in the same place? But in other words,
We actually try not to move them very far. We move them just far enough that we're hoping to confuse the coyotes. And the new nest does have to be bigger because we can't fit them in. I don't want to squish them in. Somehow she lays them in with gravity, I think. They just go plopping in there.
Yeah.
By the time I get to them, they've already been in there for somewhere between 3 and 8 hours. So we want to be really careful not to damage them. So the instructions are to keep them as closely oriented to their original orientation as possible. And the first ones you take out of the nest are going to be the last ones you put in the other nest, so that goes top to bottom, bottom to top.
Oh, right. So they won't be in the same place vertically.
Well, they'll be close, right? Because you're taking them out and then they're building up, and then you're putting them back in the other direction. So they should be fairly close.
But like you said, in the original nest, the bottom ones become the top ones in the new nest.
No, because they go into a bucket first. So the top eggs come out and they become the bottom eggs in the bucket. And then when you get all the way down to the bottom eggs are the top of the bucket. And we actually take some of the sand, so long as it hasn't been predated, we'll take the sand that's in that chamber, put it in a towel, and put that in the new chamber in the bottom, because we know that the sort of mucus that the mother turtle puts in there with her eggs has an antifungal, antibacterial component to it. So we want to make sure that they have enough of that to help them succeed. We still, I mean, if we mess with them, we don't have as high a success. It's still pretty high. It's like 85%, but our nests that are left in place, unless they've been drowned by a late season storm, our nests that are left in place usually come closer to 90, 95. So
Wow.
our goal is to leave as many in place as possible.
Thank you.
Hey, Judy, Scott again. Hey, so are you placing the protective mesh over all the nests or just the ones that you're moving because of predation?
We are placing them over all of them.
Okay.
It's part of marking for our community. A lot of places will put like a whole little tape fence around them, or they'll put a triangle of string. We just use the fence as a way to tell everybody to stay off. So it works for coyotes, but also people.
Yeah, and is the default the plastic meshing that you put over it?
That's what we're using because
Yeah.
the raised cages are better for raccoons. The flat is better for coyotes, and that's
Yeah.
our most. That's our
And
most.
I thought I heard you say that they're holding up for like 3 years, but are you keeping the plastics on the beach or are you pulling them up and then reusing them again for the following?
We pull them up and reuse them.
Good.
So
Good.
no, the nice thing about those is the metal cages really do degrade, and
Yep.
also they also slice open our turtle team's legs when we're carrying them. The plastic we can roll back up, and we roll it up
Yeah.
with stakes and the sign, and it's just a kit that you can grab in one hand. It's super lightweight, and you can get out to the beach again. But no,
That's good to hear.
as soon as they hatch, we roll them back up and use them again. That's why I
That's
said
good
we've
to
gotten
hear.
4 or 5 years out of them, and they're
It's
still going
left-
strong.
Yeah, if they're left out there, they will eventually become microplastics. So
Oh, for sure.
make sure you pull it out. Yeah.
No, we do not want to be part of that. And we
Right.
actually did a lot of research. We worked with the Isle of Palms turtle team to do this. We did a lot of research on what screens were set for this kind of ocean sunlight use. Great
Yeah.
question about keeping the sand from covering the screens. We actually you don't mess with them after 45 days. So I actually have my fancy little map that I got a little AI help to build. That turns the nests turn a different color at 45 days, which tells us we need to watch for hatchlings, but also we shouldn't mess with it. We do have instances especially before it rained, where we just had so much moving sand on the beach that we are clearing off the sand. You don't move the cage up because it just makes the distance that those hatchlings have to get a little bit higher. So we use a old-fashioned dustpan to sort of scoop the sand out of the way of that cage.
Hey, Judy. This is Allison Daly. I don't have my video up there because
That's okay.
I don't look too good. But anyway, I have heard about turtle rescue, of course, for 30 plus years, but I had no idea how scientific and precise this is. So I'm wondering, how long have volunteers been doing this?
In South Carolina, Sally Murphy was kind of the big leader of the turtle protection movement, and she used to supervise from DNR. She's got a great book it's got the word tide in it somewhere. So at least 30 years here in South Carolina. But in Florida, my grandparents were helping. I mean, I'm not sure that what they chose to do. I mean, a long time ago, people would bring the whole bucket of eggs in their garage and let them summer in the garage and then put them back out. And we know a lot more about development now, so that's not something we're doing anymore. But I think that the more we know, the more careful we are, and the more nests we're having. So each year we're having more nests generally, like the general curve goes up, but the cycle goes up and down because some turtles take 2 years off, some take 3 off, sometimes we think there's going to be a big year. I thought last year was going to be a really big year, and it was kind of like, okay. And then this year is going gangbusters on most places. So I think the general trend is good, but some of that has to do with education and protection, and B, 30 years ago, which is when most of these new mothers would have hatched, that's when they started putting the turtle extruder devices in the shrimp boats. So the shrimp nets now have a flap that can push because the turtle's so big, those turtles aren't drowning in the shrimp nets anymore because they get pushed to the bottom and out a slide in the shrimp nets. So where the shrimp fall into one place, the turtles get shunted out another direction, and that protects more of them.
And one last question. What you've said this, but what is the season?
So we used to start May 15th. We've moved it back to May 8th, but we have had nests as early as May 1st. Um, when we first started 20 years ago, we were seeing turtles coming ashore as late as mid-August. So we kind of officially stop our walking on August 15th, but our season drops off pretty sharply right about now. And then the hatching starts. So, and that hatching, depending on when those turtles come ashore, might be as late as October. Last year we had a really good season, but some of that was due to the fact that last year, knock on wood, we did not have an August hurricane. So,
Judy, can I ask a question? My name's Paula Sisson. I used to work with Sally Murphy. She was pretty tough. And I used to work up at Cape when I was much younger. But and I'm at Folly now. But I wanted to ask you, it looks like you have some beautiful wide beaches up there. Like they just go on and on. I guess there's not a lot of development, which
so Dewey's Island is in a conservation easement. So north of us is Capers, Bull, and Cape Remain. So we are at the end of, I think, about 60 miles of undeveloped coast. Dewey's was put in this conservation easement in the 70s as with Capers, and eventually I think the state sold Dewey's back to a developer because they sort of ran out of money to keep it as a park, but it was all in this easement. So we don't have any paved roads. You have to use turtle-friendly lighting. You cannot plant non-native plants in the ground. You don't have lawns. All your houses are elevated. You can't use wide spectrum pesticides. You can't trap rats with anticoagulants. So it is a little bit of a utopian ideal, but it's also a 30-year-old utopian ideal, and there's been a lot of turnover. So
Yeah.
communicating that to new folks who were looking for a great place to work during the pandemic and found this different model, but really just wanted to be out of New York. Communicating that as a constant educational thing. So it's an interesting experiment.
It is interesting. One thing I wanted to ask is when you said you had a couple nests out on the beach and they've gotten washed over, do you think maybe they're going to be boys?
Well, that's the hope, right? I mean, that's they've also had 6 inches of rainfall on them in 2 days.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, a third of all the rain we've gotten this year fell in the last 3 days, and that means that maybe I mean again, they've been doing this for millennia, so we assume that they're kind of designed to withstand that sort of weather event.
Right, right. They're pretty tough, yeah. And I'm like you, like I want to keep my hands off as much as possible. I don't want to have any influence on them. But then like at Folly, we have the tide comes up so high, we have to move a lot of them. The high tide is, I always think about, okay, 60 days, how much is the tide going to come up? How many full moons? Is it going to affect the turtle? So I'm thinking females, males, females.
Yeah.
Males. So, anyway.
You can definitely overthink this. We're also not in a hurry. Our poor interns are used to being up at Cape, and they might process 50 nests a day. And then they'll be here, and we come down to the beach. If we have 3 on a given day, it's a record-breaking event. It's usually 1 every few days, and we'll come down and we get to talk about what direction she was going. What did she think?
Yeah.
The moon? Where were the tides? We have time to really, use it as an educational opportunity, but it's always they trick you all the time. It's always
you overthink it. Yeah. And I know up there you don't have time to evaluate every nest. You just got to get it to safety. And they do a tremendous job up there. So I don't know, I feel blessed that we have so many turtles here and they've become so charismatic. When I used to work with Sally and those TEDs, it wasn't that big a deal that back then, but so just on some of the beaches, but there wasn't a lot of even volunteering. So anyway, thanks for your presentation. That was really great.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Hey, Judy.
Hey, Judy.
This is Karen Bartlett. I was going to say that today on Sullivan's Island, our 16th nest was found, and that is
Wow.
That is a record. That is
That's so exciting.
in all the years that they've been, tracking. So
That is great. I got trained on Sullivan's and Isle of Palms because I still lived in Mount Pleasant before I got out here. So I think I walked the Sullivan's Beach for 2 years and never saw a track. So that is so cool.
yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We have
Hey,
115 we have 115 at Folly as of
That
this
is
morning. So
Wow.
that's amazing.
yeah, it's a big number for us. Yeah.
Hey, Judy, Scott again. Hey, so you were talking about the TEDs, the turtle exclusion devices being a big conservation plus to help numbers rebound. I'm sure you're aware of this too, but many years ago, dredging windows were put into place so that dredging would not occur when the turtles were feeding down in the bottom of the channels, and that's also been a contributor, I
Yes,
think. To
for
what
sure.
percentage? I don't know, but it's been a pretty big contributor. It's like, I don't know, depends on who you ask. A few years ago, there was a new biological opinion, the SARBO, South Atlantic Biological Opinion, that opened the windows up to beyond just the winter. So, and that was primarily for protection for North Atlantic right whales, which are critically endangered, to avoid ship strikes. But that's the
Yeah,
time when
Isle
the
of Palms is
nurdles are
doing.
down in the channel. So I don't know how much you know about that, but yeah,
I know that trying to figure out when you have different species with different needs,
right.
that makes a big difference. I could talk about right whales for a while. That's a whole other fun thing. We've got a receiver on top of one of our buildings to get information from sonar detection for right whales and then send it back to ship's captains so they know right where the whale is and they can
Yep.
slow down. But
Yep.
like Isle
10
of
knot.
Palms is in the middle of doing this renourishment right now. There's a big crane out there. The first night they had a lot of lights on, but that's gotten better. But they have to use a window. It's probably not optimal for turtles, but it's after most of the shorebirds have nested before it's going to affect the fish issue. So it's you've got all these different pieces of the puzzle that people are trying to protect as well. So
Yeah.
it can be really complicated to figure
And
out what
they're
the best window is for those things.
often diametrically opposed. So yeah, that's a real conservation challenge. Yeah, for
It
sure.
is. It is for sure.
Yeah.
I saw a question in the chat. What
Yep.
was your question? Was water temperature? It's a great question. We had cooler water for later in the year, and then now it's pretty warm, but it kind of fluctuates. And I thought we might be later in our nesting, and we were a little bit later, but it still seems to be a big year.
Thank you, Judy, so very, very much. This was very interesting. Definitely, I think a hot topic with lots of people because they are so lovable for sure. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of the wonderful information. And thank you for what you're doing as well. So
Oh, you're welcome.
for
Yes.
sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
Well,
everyone
have a
have
great
a
day.
wonderful rest of your evening. There's a bunch of August programs coming up, so definitely keep checking the website and we'll send out more information. And if you ever have any questions, just let us know. And Judy, again, thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Judy.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you. That was
Judy.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.
Good night.